Hey everyone, it's Mr. Travel here. We're live. Well, not really live. It's a YouTube video after all. Anyway, you got that little blue book, the American passport. Think it's a magic key to go everywhere in the world. Think again, my friend. Turns out there are places where that passport doesn't get you very far. Places where things get a little tricky as soon as you step off the plane. We're talking strict entry rules, political tensions, security concerns, a real adventure. If you're an American who loves to travel, you got to watch this. We're diving deep into 10 countries where your American passport might raise eyebrows. Get ready, hit subscribe, turn on notifications. That's it. Let's go. First up, we're going straight to the top. Well, the top of the Korean peninsula, that is, North Korea. The land of Kim Jong-un and, well, not much else if you're looking for information. Getting into North Korea is like trying to sneak backstage at a Beyoncé concert. Close to impossible. You know the United States and North Korea, right? Not exactly best buddies. Decades of political tension, nuclear threats, the whole shebang. In fact, it's actually illegal for US citizens to travel to North Korea without special permission from the US government, which, spoiler alert, they almost never give. They're a little picky about who they let in, especially when it comes to Americans, and if you thought getting a visa for Russia was tough, forget about it. We're talking intense scrutiny, constant surveillance, and very limited access to, well, everything, basically, the opposite of a relaxing vacation. But hey, the air of mystery is kind of North Korea's thing, right? Still probably best to admire this one from afar, folks. Our next stop takes us to the Middle East, flying into Iran. Now, unlike North Korea, Iran isn't completely off limits for Americans. But don't rush to book your ticket just yet. Things here are, to put it lightly, complicated. We're talking decades of political tension, sanctions, and a whole lot of mistrust between the two governments. Getting a visa, as an American, let's just say it's not as easy as ordering takeout. It takes time, paperwork, and a whole lot of patience. And even if you do get your visa approved, be prepared for some serious scrutiny when you arrive. We're talking being followed, your phone calls being listened to, the whole 9 yards. Not exactly the kind of trip where you can just relax and soak in the culture. Which is a shame because Iran has a rich history, stunning architecture, and incredibly hospitable people. But unfortunately, the political climate casts a long shadow over everything. So yeah, Iran, beautiful, complicated, and definitely not for the faint of heart, especially if you're American. And we arrive in Syria. Once a vibrant country, full of history and culture, Syria has been caught in the middle of a conflict for many years. And yes, you guessed it right. This is a place where your US passport won't do you much good. It might even be dangerous. The State Department has been issuing travel warnings for Syria for a long time, and for good reason. The country has faced massive destruction, the infrastructure is shattered, and the political situation is incredibly unstable. Danger lurks around every corner, and as a tourist, you'd be putting yourself at a very high risk of ending up in a dangerous situation. Getting a visa for US citizens is almost impossible, and frankly, it's best not to even try. I don't want to make light of the tragedy that the people of Syria are going through. This is a terrible situation affecting millions, and our hearts go out to them. But as a content creator, my aim is to be honest with you and help you make informed decisions when planning your travels. Syria is not a safe place to visit right now. I hope one day that changes, peace prevails, and we can all rediscover this ancient land. But for now, you need to keep Syria off your travel list. Next up, we have Yemen. Located at the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, this country has unfortunately been struggling with conflict and instability for a long time. And yeah, you guessed it, your US passport won't do you much good here. In fact, the US Department of State strongly advises against traveling to Yemen. Yemen faces a whole bunch of challenges, including an ongoing civil war, the presence of terrorist groups, and widespread kidnappings. In short, it's an incredibly dangerous place to visit, especially if you're a tourist. You might have heard stories about Yemen's stunning landscapes and rich history, but for now it's best to enjoy those stories from afar. Getting a visa is super difficult for US citizens, and even if you manage to snag one, you'd be putting yourself at extreme risk. Your safety is not guaranteed, and If things go south, there will be limited resources to help you. It's just not worth the risk, folks. Hopefully one day we'll see Yemen emerge from this dark period and reclaim its former glory. But for now, it's best to cross this beautiful country off your travel list and focus on safer and more welcoming destinations. And as we move over to North Africa, we come across Libya, a country that was once a thriving outpost of the Roman Empire, but now finds itself in a state of uncertainty and turmoil. And you guessed it, your US passport won't do you much good here. The State Department strongly advises against traveling to Libya, and it's important to take this warning seriously. Since the civil war in 2011, Libya has been grappling with political instability, violence, and a weak rule of law. The country is divided between various militia groups, each with its own agenda, and this makes for an extremely dangerous and unpredictable environment. For tourists, visiting Libya right now is like walking through a minefield. You just shouldn't do it. Libya has ancient ruins and stunning desert landscapes, but these attractions are currently inaccessible and unsafe. Obtaining a visa for US citizens is extremely difficult, and even if you manage to get one, you would be putting yourself at extreme risk. Let's hope that one day Libya will find stability and peace, open up this unique country to visitors from all over the world. But for now, it's best to cross Libya off your travel plans and focus on safer and more stable destinations. All right, everyone, our next stop is South America. And no, we're not talking about Carnival in Brazil, we're talking about Venezuela, once a popular spot for tourists, but now a place that's seriously risky for US citizens. Why? Because the relationship between the US and Venezuela is a total mess. Imagine two people constantly yelling at each other on the phone, but instead of people, it's countries, and instead of yelling, it's sanctions and travel warnings. The US Department of State is pretty clear about traveling to Venezuela. Don't. Seriously, go to their website, type in Venezuela, and you'll see the warnings in big red letters. Crime, violence, political instability. These are real dangers you could face every day in Venezuela. And if you're carrying a US passport, you could be making yourself a target. Now, some of you might be thinking, Mr. Travel, you're a guy who's not afraid to take risks. Why don't you go to Venezuela and see what's up for yourself? And you're right, I love adventure, but I'm not stupid. The situation in Venezuela is really serious, and I'm not going to put myself or my team in unnecessary danger. Instead, let's focus on what we can do to help the people of Venezuela. Donating to aid organizations, raising awareness, even just educating ourselves about the situation. All of these things can make a difference. Remember, the world isn't just about the beautiful places we see on Instagram. It's also about the places that are struggling and need our help. Our next stop is Somalia, a country located in the Horn of Africa that has been devastated by decades of conflict. And honestly, if you have a US passport, this is not the place you want to visit. The US Department of State has issued its highest level of warning against traveling to Somalia, and for good reason. Somalia is a place where terrorism, kidnapping, and piracy are common. Yes, you heard that right. Piracy. Crazy, right? Especially in the 21st century. But in the waters off the coast of Somalia, armed groups are still active, hijacking ships and demanding ransom. And trust me, it's not like Pirates of the Caribbean. Now, I don't want to downplay the suffering of the Somali people. They are living in terrible conditions and they need more help from the international community. But the reality is that Somalia is not a place for tourists right now, especially not for US citizens. So when you're planning your next trip, cross Somalia off your list. Choose a safer and less dangerous place instead. There are plenty of amazing places to explore in the world, and it's best to postpone visiting Somalia, at least until things get better. Afghanistan, just hearing the name brings up images of war, fighting, and danger for many people. And to be honest, they're not wrong. Afghanistan is a country that has been torn apart by war for decades, and it's an incredibly dangerous place for US citizens. The US State Department has issued its highest level of warning for travel to Afghanistan, and any American needs to take that warning seriously. Since the Taliban took control of the country, the situation has become even more unstable, and violence continues to increase. Now, some of you might be thinking that Afghanistan is a country with a rich history and culture, and traveling there could be an amazing experience. And you might be right, but not right now. The current situation in Afghanistan is just too risky for any tourist, especially US citizens. So when you're planning your next adventure, cross Afghanistan off your list. Choose a safer and less dangerous place to visit instead. There are plenty of amazing places to explore in the world, and it's best to postpone visiting Afghanistan, at least until things get better. Sudan. Now, this is a place with a complicated history and an even more complicated present. Political turmoil, tribal clashes, humanitarian crises, you name it. Sudan has probably experienced it in the last decade. And for US citizens, that means the State Department has some pretty strong warnings about not traveling there. Sound harsh? Maybe. But the US government isn't willing to take any chances when it comes to the safety of its people. And honestly, can you blame them? Turn on the news and it's impossible to miss the headlines about what's happening in Sudan. It's not exactly an ideal vacation spot right now, but what about the adventurous travelers? The free spirits, the ones who love to push boundaries and explore the road less traveled. Sudan is definitely a place of intrigue, but for now, you might want to direct that adventurous spirit elsewhere. At least until things settle down a bit. Because here's the thing. Travel is about experiencing the world, diving into new cultures and connecting with different people. But it's also about staying safe. And right now in Sudan, you just can't guarantee that for US citizens. Pakistan. It's a country with stunning landscapes, a rich history, and a vibrant culture. From the soaring peaks of the Himalayas to the lush valleys of the Indus River, it's safe to say that Pakistan is not short on things to see and do. But for US citizens, Pakistan, much like the other countries on this list, is complicated. On the one hand, you have incredibly warm and welcoming people, known for their hospitality, and yes, certain areas within the country are considered relatively safe for tourists. But on the other hand, you can't ignore the fact that the US government is very, very serious about you not traveling to certain parts of the country, because the truth is, Pakistan has seen its fair share of terrorism and political instability, and as US citizens we are unfortunately seen as potential targets. Is it fair? No, but it's the reality. And we need to acknowledge that. So if you're thinking about traveling to Pakistan, understand the risks, check the State Department's travel advisories, and ask yourself, is this trip worth it? And if the answer is yes, then please, please be safe. So there you have it, folks. 10 places where your US passport doesn't exactly get you an automatic welcome mat. These are all countries with complex histories, political landscapes, and security concerns, and honestly, the list is always changing. Looking at the state of the world right now, that's even more true. That's why, no matter where you go, it's so important to do your research. And look, I get it. Traveling, exploring the world, connecting with new cultures, it's an incredible privilege. But it's also a responsibility to ourselves and to those around us. So please, travel safe, be respectful, and always be aware.